Good, we're recording. Welcome to part 13 of Faith and Calm. And we're going to mute Siri just in case
Right.
to do things there.
The noisy person.
Well, you're busy there.
I don't take it personally.
Okay. All right. And Amy muted herself already, but anybody else who's interested in interrupting, they say,
I
what do
have
they say?
noisy children. I just thought, just in case, I didn't want to interrupt you.
The old story goes as follows. What do you call it when one person's talking and another person starts talking? We call that interrupting somebody. Now, what happens if one person is singing and another person starts singing? What do we call that?
What do you call it?
Harmony. So
Oh.
the secret to life is to stop talking and start singing together, and we're all in harmony. So that's I think that's it's a Breslov saying, but I really like it, Rebbe Nachum.
I love that.
So that's the secret to life, is singing together. So this week, and in 2 days actually, coming up is Gimel Tammuz. Gimel Tammuz is a special day on the Chabad calendar, a calendar for the whole world. One is that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe came out of prison from Gulag, death sentence, for spreading Judaism. What else? Russia was that kind of place. And the our current Rebbe, that was the day that I was down there. I was in Crown Heights, and they announced that he passed away. And so there was a funeral, but we call it the Histalkus, because the Rebbe is still very much with us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be succeeding like we are today. So it's a holiday of mixed feelings. So one of the things that we tried to do is tell stories about the Rebbe. And I think that there's a lot of lessons, because I talked about last week about how, the Rebbe on the previous parsha talked about how everybody has to be a candlelight, a menorah lighter, and make sure that other people are inspired and their flame goes up by themselves, so that they spread the ideas themselves also. And that's really our mission in this world, is you have effects on other people, and other people have effects on other people, until finally it goes through the whole world. So this is all part of our mission in this world. So I want to break this up into 3 sections of stories, which we're not going to capture the Rebbe at all, but gives you a little bit of a glimpse, a little bit of a picture into what a Rebbe is, and then the Rebbe inside each one of us, because that's what the Rebbe wanted us to do, is each one of us to discover that infinite power inside each one of us, to be able to we're never a victim of circumstances. We can always overcome whatever we have. So the first section, you could call it Jewish identity or Jewish dignity. The second part about positivity, and the third about infinity. Now I'll explain what those 3 things are. So we know about Jewish identity is very challenged. In many ways, Jews have a lot of problem with standing up and saying, proudly that they're Jewish. And this is understandable, actually, after 2,000 years of Gullus, where you're kicked out of country after country after country, and you're told you're the worst of the worst, and you don't deserve a country of your own, and the land of Israel doesn't belong to you anymore. We sort of internalize this negative attitude about ourselves, because how long can you just assume it's the problem of the world? Maybe it's something Jews are doing wrong. And of course, that's the tool that the Arabs use against us, that we are somehow murderers, Nazis, apartheid country, and all these other things. And that really gets under our skin more than anything else, because Jews are kind and long-bearing, and to be called, to be compared to the evil people of the world really affects us. So many times people just get, they just say they have trouble standing up, and this is the secret that they've been very effective at, is making Jews feel that somehow they're bad. So that's one thing that the Rebbe constantly harped on this year. It's about how each Jew is an infinite. He's a power. He's a ability. He has and I'll tell you the couple of stories then about that. So one of the stories has to do with, well, I'll never get through all these stories. I just put even my down list is there. So Rabbi Groner was the secretary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and once he, there was somebody that went into the Rebbe and told the Rebbe all his problems, and then afterwards the Rebbe told him an answer, and he started repeating all his problems. And Rabbi Groner said, "You already told the Rebbe all your issues. Why do you have to tell it again?" And the Rebbe interrupted him and said, every time a Jew comes into my office and talks to me, it's a stone lifted off his heart, his heart. And so when he tells it to me again, it's another stone. So what do you care if somebody, gets two stones taken off their heart? So the Rebbe saw Jews in a different way. The Rebbe saw Jews, each Jew is, you have to have a certain sense to see a Jew, the inner part of a Jew. One time a businessman came into the Rebbe and he saw how many letters the Rebbe had to open every day. And he bought him he said, "I'm going to buy the Rebbe a letter opener so that the Rebbe doesn't have to open all the letters that he has to answer each day." And the Rebbe returned the letter opener, and he said it was too noisy. So this guy searched all over the world, and he finally found the silent model of a letter opener, and he sent it into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe still didn't want it. And he says, "Why not?" And the Rebbe explained, and he says, Hasidim, when they write me about all these personal issues that they have, about family issues, about deaths, about sicknesses, about all these kind of stuff. And Hasidim seal their letters in different ways. Some of people just lick the envelope and seal it. Some of them use tape to seal it. And some of them seal the envelope with tears. And so the Rebbe said, "How can I open a letter that has been sealed with tears with a machine?" So he could pick up the spiritual energy. The Rebbe was very sensitive to every single Jew and everybody's individual problems. And just to emphasize this a little bit more. So there was in one time, there was a Israeli soldier named Yosef Kapili. Yosef Kapili was a young soldier. He was in the battles in the Golan in the 1972, in the battles 73, the Yom Kippur War. And he was on patrol once, and he woke up and he found himself in a hospital. And when he woke up, he felt a tremendous pain in his legs. And he pulled off the blankets to see what was going on. And he was shocked to find that both legs had been amputated, one at the knee and one at the thigh. And this was only the beginning of his problems. When he got home, all his friends came, but they couldn't bear to talk to him. They would just look down at the ground and be embarrassed. And his parents and his mother were crying all the time. And there he was sitting, trying to rehab himself, and everybody was thinking, "What a never case, what a empty, what a case, a case he is." Now later, a couple of years later, 1976, the IDF sent these soldiers. They called them the Nechei Yisrael, the crippled of the Israel IDF, on a tour of the different countries of the world, and they came to New York as part of this tour. And the Rebbe invited them to come to the 770. And there in 770, he gave a speech to them. And in the speech, the Rebbe said a very interesting thing. The Rebbe said, it's a Jewish custom to mix into the business of somebody else's business and other people's business and to give their opinions. So if you'll excuse me, I'll do the same thing. It says the army refers to you as the Nechei of the IDF. The Nechei of the Tzahal, of the army, the crippled of the army. He says, "I have a suggestion." He says, "I don't look at Jews as cripples. Every single person has the abilities and the talents to be able to be successful wherever he is. If a person doesn't have an arm, or a person doesn't have a leg, or he has losing an eye, then he must have been given some compensatory power inside of his soul to be able to accomplish his mission where he succeeds. He's beyond everybody else. Not that he's crippled and lacking in something." And this was 1976, the whole idea. So he said, I want to change the name of this from the crippled of the soldiers, or the injured of the soldiers to the mitsuyan, the exceptional, the special. soldiers, because every one of you is special. This was before the term of special needs ever came out or anything else. The Rebbe didn't even like the term in Hebrew, Beit Cholim, which means house of sickness. He said it should be called the Beis Refuah, house of healing. The Rebbe didn't like harping on the negative aspects of things. If you are here and you're alive, it must mean that you have powers and abilities. And he went down and he went to each individual soldier. I can show you a little screen share here.
Okay, click on it.
No,
First
I
click
can't.
on-
It's got closed somehow.
It got close. Oh, you closed it accidentally.
Maybe not. Okay.
No.
All right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Screen
Wait a
share.
minute. No, but where did you put it?
Oh, it's not here. All right. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna mess with this.
Okay.
Somehow it's not working.
Okay.
I'm not gonna get into the technical issues here.
Okay.
All right.
So just click over here.
It doesn't.
Up
well, it
here.
doesn't-
Up here.
Oh.
This little thing in the corner. Just get rid of it.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
Anyway, he came down and he gave each soldier. You can look at the Rebbe and IDF. You get the pictures and the little video of what he said and so forth. And he gave each soldier $1, and he also spoke to each one individually. And to this particular soldier, who had been suffering for years with all these negative, depressive thoughts, he told him just 2 words. He said, "Toda Rabba," thank you very much. And the Yosef Kabili said, that changed my life, because nobody ever really acknowledged or thanked me for my gift to the Jewish people. And I felt like I was appreciated. And he said he went on from that, and he became a very rich and very successful real estate agent. And he says, this is what was changed my life, is just somebody appreciating me as an individual, and me as what he and the sacrifice that he gave for the Jewish people. And this, I think, is the first theme that I wanted to mention about the Rebbe. I think I'm gonna have to skip the second theme because I'll run out of time. Well, just one short little thing. So this is a cute story. There was once a man who was very depressed, always negative feelings about everything going on in his life. And he always was talking about how terrible his life was. And he happened to be in the shipping business. And one time he was making a shipment of dairy goods to go by train to Vancouver. And while he was loading up the train car, he was in the refrigerated truck where they were filling up the dairy goods, and his workers just accidentally closed the door on him and left him inside the refrigerated truck with the dairy goods. And he screamed, he yelled, he tried his cell phone. Nothing. I guess there were no cell phones in those days. He was banging on the door, but nobody could hear him over the noise of the train. And as the train left, he realized this was the end. So he got on a piece of cardboard, and he wrote down a farewell message to his wife. And in it, he wrote down, and he said, I always knew my life would end something like this. It's been one disaster after another disaster after another, and this is the perfect fitting end of my life. And when the car got to Vancouver, this is a true story. When we got to Vancouver, they opened up the truck, the car doors, and they found him laying on the ground. They called the doctor, and the doctor diagnosed him as acute hypothermia, and they sent him to the hospital. There was just one problem. He didn't have hypothermia because the air conditioning, the cooling was not working in the train car. And the moral of the story is that if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right, which is a quote from, believe it or not, Henry Ford. So basically, it's the power of our minds and our life. When we think negative thoughts and we think badly about ourselves and our abilities, it affects us. And the Rebbe couldn't stand that negative approach to things. He saw plenty of bad things. The Rebbe lived through Stalin and through Hitler and through Soviet Union and everything else. He knew all about sadness and depressing thoughts in this world. And yet, when he came to America, the only thing he would tolerate is, the Nazis tried to kill us and make us feel like nobodies. And the Rebbe said, it's the exact opposite. You are connected to God. You are an infinite power. You have infinite abilities. And there's no reason ever to feel, no matter what you are, that you're a victim of your circumstances and of your life. And you're always on a path towards God. And I'll speak more maybe next week about this, because otherwise I'll run over my time. So the last set of stories is about the infinite, but it relates to it, the infinite power of a Jew. So there's a rabbi from South Africa. You can look up his story. His name was Rabbi David Lapine. He was not Chabad. He learned in Gateshead. And he had not a congregation. He was teaching Torah classes in South Africa, I guess Johannesburg, to Talmud classes, teach classes to women and stuff like that. But he never wanted to be like subservient, like a synagogue rabbi, independent to the board. So he also had a job as an investment banker, and he was very successful at this. And his friends wanted him to spend more time on that. And he found himself, really with 2 full-time jobs, being a rabbi and being an investment counselor and banker and so forth. And he felt this was too much. He was not giving his family enough time. So when he came to New York one time, he asked for an audience with the Rebbe. Now, he didn't realize that you had to book this in advance, a couple months. But so they told him no. Then he wrote back and he said, but it's not just me. It's a whole community that'd be affected if I don't get an answer. So the Rebbe agreed to see him after his normal hours, which was probably like 4 o'clock in the morning. He came in with his wife. He said it was a very special meeting. And he told in 15 minutes, he told the Rebbe basically his issue. And he asked the Rebbe what to do. And the Rebbe's reply back to him was, you should continue with both. And he's not a Chabad Chassid. So he said, Rebbe, it's not possible. I'm so busy right now with 2 jobs, to continue with both and to continue. And how is it possible? So the Rebbe looks at him and he says, you know what your problem is? I'll tell you what your problem is. You think that human interactions, this is beautiful, human interactions are like chemical interactions, meaning that in order to have water, you have to have 2 hydrogen and 2 oxygen, and the amount of stuff that you put in is how much water you're going to get out. He says human interactions don't work that way. Human interactions are like nuclear reactions. That you have 1 atom shoots off a neutron and it hits another one and it shoots off 4 neutrons and that hits another 4 atoms and then they give off another 4 each one, and it's an exponential explosion like a nuclear force. He says that's what human beings are like. And Rabbi Lapine got the message. And every time he had to give a talk to like 100 people, he imagined that maybe what he's really reaching is 10,000 people. And that's what the Rebbe viewed. The Rebbe viewed the power of a Jew, that our souls, was not limited just in what we see visibly and how we affect other human beings. Everything we say and everything we do and every time we influence another person, you don't know what kind of power you're having, because if you really turn on the switch inside that other person, then they turn on the switch in other people, and it just cascades. Goodness cascades. It grows and it grows and it grows and it grows. And that's the nature of the infinity of the Jewish soul. And I'll finish with one final story, which I think is very apropos to this period in time, and really also captures this whole thing. So did you ever hear of the name Shirley Chisholm? How many people have, yes, I've ever heard of Shirley Chisholm. Shirley Chisholm was the very first Black female representative from Brooklyn, New York. She was an activist in the Black movement. She was a teacher, and then she was an assemblywoman. And sometime in the early 70s, she was elected for the first time to the U.S. Congress. And she was very happy that, because I think there was only one Black, Adam Clayton Powell, who had been in the Congress before. She was the first Black woman from Brooklyn. She grew up in Brooklyn, and that's what she represented, was Brooklyn. But at that point in time, there were still a lot of white segregationists, especially in the Democratic Party, which she was. And so when they handed out committee assignments, they put her on the Agriculture Committee. She was livid. She was furious. In fact, the New York Times even thought it was really funny. And they wrote a headline article. They titled it, "Does a Tree Grow in Brooklyn?" Because, she was expecting to be on some sort of anti-poverty or education or somewhere where she could help Black people. And farms just I don't know if you know this, but there aren't a lot of farms in Brooklyn, you know? So what is she doing on the agriculture committee? She thought this was like, you know, this was such an insult. This was racism, out and out racism from her own party. She was furious. So not long after this, the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent her a message, which is rare, and asked to meet with her. Now, she knew about the Lubavitcher Rebbe because she had gone to the Lubavitcher Rebbe asking for an endorsement before she ran. And the Rebbe politely told her, he says, I just don't endorse anybody, but I will give you my blessings. So, you know, she wasn't, she wasn't like, you know, a fan of the Rebbe, but she got the invitation, so she decided to go. She went. So she comes to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, I'll get right down to it. I hear that you're sort of you're upset about what's happening with you. She says, I'm not just upset. I am furious. This is such an insult. This is such a disaster. You know, what am I going to do on the agriculture committee? And the Rebbe looked at her. This is no black woman, and he said, I don't see it the way you do it. I see it as a positive thing. She says, what? He says, yeah. He says, do you know how many people in your district are hungry, go to bed starving, you know, and need food? And do you know that in this country, we have a tremendous surplus of food in this country? I think that you're going to be able to do something about this. And she doesn't make the connection. And a few weeks later, she goes to Washington. And then on her first day in Washington, she's wandering around the halls of the Capitol, and she runs across a freshman senator whose name was Bob Dole. If you know Bob Dole, he became a senator first time for Kansas. And they start schmoozing. And as they're talking, Bob Dole says, you know, I have this tremendous problem. In Kansas, we have a tremendous surplus of food, and we don't know what to do with it. It just, you know, piles up, and we have to destroy it. And it just is a shame that all this food goes to waste. I don't know what to do about it. All of a sudden, the light goes on in her head, and she realizes, wow, that's what the Rebbe told me. And that day, they both sat down, and that was the beginning of the whole food stamps process. She was the one who introduced food stamps. And many years later, she tells the story. You can look it up. I'm not making the story up. She says, you know, that the women and, you know, infants and children, the whole food stamp stuff, and it didn't help just black kids. It helped everybody in the whole, you know, everybody who was poor, all came from a certain rabbi in Brooklyn who had a certain vision of how, you know, that whatever is happening to you, whatever disaster you think is going on in your life, it's there for a purpose. You're on a journey, you're on a road, you're on a path, and there's some purpose that you can actually accomplish in that. And you have to be able to open your eyes up and not see yourself as a victim, but you see yourself as an ambassador for bringing the infinite light into this world. And the Rebbe taught this over and over again. I can just keep going through story after story after story of how the Rebbe influenced, inspired, and touched people to realize the Rebbe, the infinite power in themselves, because they're a part of God and they're never disconnected. It's true many times people go through extremely hard situations, didn't deny it, he saw it, he felt it, he cried, he felt the pain of the world. On the other hand, though, he said it's never it's our choice to whether to just let that debilitate ourselves, or whether to see yourself as a loser, or to see yourself as somebody who is going into a dark place in order to bring out a light that's never been seen before. And that, I think, is the message of Gimel Tammuz, the message of Gimel Tammuz for every single Jew, and for all of us who are Shlichum, because that's what inspired us to put more and more effort into reaching more and more people and wider communities. Is this message is just such an empowering message, and I don't know how to add to that right now. So I'll open up the floor to any questions. And then I'll give over the floor to my wife if there's no questions.
I don't have a
Everybody
question.
is mute, so let me unmute everybody.
Oh, I was unmuted. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that's an absolutely amazing story. That was just incredible. I'm so glad to hear everything that you said tonight, as I usually am. But I just really wanted to say I was particularly moved by that. That was really, really neat. I even took notes. So Susan can tell you.
Yeah,
I told her,
actually, I had to take notes. I went to, searched online. The story's there on Chabad.org, in her own words, Shirley Chisholm. She, the whole thing is captured. So if you do Shirley Chisholm, Lubavitcher Rebbe, you'll find the story, the original one. So all of this stuff is out there. It's just not known. Yep. Anything else, or are we going to turn it over to Shalom Meshudas here?
I'm going to take my picture up so I can immodestly eat some ice cream.
Oh,
But I'm still listening.
okay. All right. Good. Now we've got Shalom Yisud online. We've got Suri, Mali, somebody called Gab El, I don't know, Susan and Zach,
Oh, good.
and Shimi.
Awesome. Awesome.
Her name is Gabby or something.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Hi.
Hi.
Oh, who is it? Who is
Here.
it?
Maybe you want to
Okay,
show
good.
this person here.
No. These for tomorrow.
Okay.
This is my, you guys are the adult Zoom. This guy is for, this guy's for tomorrow. He's for the kids. So I'm very happy with him though. Yes, Shlomo, you just took my papers or you took your
Yeah,
papers?
my papers.
Okay, you sure? Okay, good. So, good. Gabriella? Is that Gabriella? Who's G?
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, I don't know who you are, but if you want to let me know later, you can. Okay, good. So
Okay.
anyway, on such an auspicious day, as it's not Gimel Tammuz yet. Gimel Tammuz is in Gimel Tammuz is on Thursday. And the Rebbe said the most amazing thing about Gimel Tammuz. Gimel Tammuz 26 years ago, I went to the Rebbe's funeral. Haskell Shimon also went to the Rebbe's funeral 26 years ago on Gimel Tammuz. And a very remarkable thing, it was supposed to be our first date. And he called me up at 8 in the morning and he said, oh, something came up. And anyway, so we both went independently. And anyway, the Rebbe itself, the most remarkable thing about Gimel Tammuz is that the Rebbe gave an entire sicha. A sicha is a talk. He gave an entire sicha 2 years before that Gimel Tammuz on what Gimel Tammuz means, what the import of that day is. The Rebbe said the most remarkable thing. He said Gimel Tammuz is the beginning of the redemption, but it's the type of beginning that will only be understood in hindsight. It's a truly remarkable thing. And I'm not going to try and go into it right now. I know that the only thing I would like to say is that, for someone who had his funeral 26 years ago, I think the Rebbe is more alive than I am. I know he's much more active than I am, and it's just he's a remarkable being to study, and I think that and we know that he if you ever look up what Jonathan Sacks, former chief rabbi of England, Lord Jonathan Sacks, when he was I alluded to this before, I think when he was a hippie college student, he came to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him, he came to the Rebbe, he actually took a trip and saw 10 great Torah giants. And when he came to the Rebbe was different from everybody, because everybody else he was impressed with. But when he was with the Rebbe turned the entire focus on him, Jonathan Sacks, hippie college student. And it's like Jonathan Sacks didn't even see the Rebbe. All he saw was himself. And the Rebbe showed him his own potential. And the Rebbe said, you could be a great Jewish leader one day. And, he became chief rabbi of England. So, and he's famous. He speaks all the time, and he's quite a good speaker. So anyway, on this day, I think that just like the Rebbe never focused on himself, I think that the Rebbe would appreciate focusing. I would like to focus on what the Rebbe focuses on, and the Rebbe focuses on the Jew, what a Jew is, the greatness of a Jew, the greatness of each one of us, and I might have said it before, but I'll say it again. It's short. My husband once said a remarkable, I don't know what his source was, but there's a remarkable parable. in this parable, there are two businessmen, and the two businessmen have a profitable business, but they realize that their business has a limit, and they decide, you know what? We're doing okay, but if one of us went down onto the factory floor, it would be so much more powerful. We would really get feedback. It would be much, much better than both of us up here in the office and nobody on the factory floor except for the workers. And so one of them agreed to go down to the factory floor, pretend he's a worker, and that way they had much more precise feedback. And it worked marvelously. But the problem is, after a while, the person who went down to the factory floor forgot he was one of the owners. He was so into the role that he completely forgot where he came from. And it's an analogy, it's a parable to what the Jew is. We're told that it is not a nice expression. It is an accurate expression that the Jew, Hashem, the Jew, and the Torah are one. We are an indivisible one thing. And so, but the problem is, the Jew, when we came down from heaven, as a people and individually, we forget our incredibly divine source. And we think, oh, here I am. Well, I guess life is about target. I don't know. We forget that we have a tremendously divine purpose. There's an amazing, we are that businessmen here on the factory floor. And from the factory floor, we are expected to produce incredibly and help the business incredibly. So I had a rabbi a long time ago. His name was Rabbi Israel Tauber. And Rabbi Tauber said a very interesting thing. He said that there are, just like the Torah, the Jewish people, and Hashem are one indivisible thing. He said, we've already seen in history the greatness of two of those three people, two of those three entities. We see the greatness of Hashem in creation. Creation is so magnificent. We can't understand an eyeball. We can't understand a tree. We can't understand anything. Hashem's greatness is in front of our eyes. And we began to understand the greatness of the Torah at Har Sinai, when the Torah was given to us. And the Rebbe said, and Rabbi Tauber said, when is the third thing, the greatness of the third thing, going to be apparent? With Mashiach. When we see Mashiach, then we're going to understand, oh, that's what a Jew is. Oh. So anyway, how do we realize this magnificent potential? We realize this magnificent potential with the rules with the tools that Hashem gave us. The tools that Hashem gave us are the mitzvos and the Torah. The Torah is our guidebook, and the mitzvahs are the tools that God gave each one of us in order for us to be the most me that we could possibly be, to realize myself in the most complete way, and to change the world in the way only you can change the world. Those are our tools, and they're designed by Hashem, and they're magnificent. I won't go into it, but I can only say that I am, anything, I owe everything to Torah and mitzvahs. I really do. I owe everything. And I feel that it was the most transformative thing I've ever done in my life. And it continues to transform me. The more I do it, the more it transforms me. So anyway, I'm going to tell a story, and this is not. I promise. Okay, I promise in the future I'll tell nice stories again. But this is a very stark, a little bit harsh, and a little bit stark of a story. But I want to tell it because it makes the point so beautifully. And it's a story about the Rebbe's Sefer Torah, how it came to be. And let me see if I sent it by email to my husband. Let me see if I can, yep, it's here. So I'm going to show you a picture of the Rebbe's Sefer Torah. And no, this is his, not mine. This is his, not mine. He had it right here. Oh, anyway, this is the Rebbe with the Israeli soldiers that he wanted to show you. I guess my thing is, okay, my thing is not here. Too bad. Too bad it's not here. Okay, forget that. Okay, so anyway, the Rebbe, this is the story of the Rebbe. The Rebbe has a very special Sefer Torah, and it's tiny. It's only 8 inches tall, and this is how the Rebbe Sefer Torah started. So so put on your seatbelts. It's a tough story. there was in Slavita in Russia, there, the Tsar was terrible to the Jewish people, and after him the communists were terrible. But the Tsar in his own right was absolutely terrible. This story happened in I think 1805, and they didn't like anything about Judaism. As happens continually again and again in our history, people don't. It's an unconscious. I think it's an unconscious realization of who the Jewish people are, and they want to suppress it. So anyway, they arrested these two people. They owned a print house. This print house put out very many important Jewish books. It might have put out the Tanya, I'm not sure. But there were two tzaddikim who ran this printing press, and their names were Pinchas and Shmuel. And what's the last name? Can't remember it right now. So anyway, Pinchas and Shmuel had a worker, and that worker was found dead somewhere, not in their factory. He was found dead, and the police investigated, and they realized this is a drunken guy, and he died naturally. But there was as often happened in those times, there was a very, very, very anti-Semitic priest. He went to the police and he said, "No, I'll tell you, these two Jews killed him, and you have to arrest them, and you have to pursue this." And so the police knew that it wasn't true, but they arrested these two people because they were as anti-Semitic as the priest. They arrested them, and for 3 years, these poor people. I really should have their name, and yeah, I think Eskelson walked off with it. Okay, and maybe not. So anyway, these two people were in jail for 3 years, and they were horribly treated and horribly, cross-examined every day, and they didn't see the light of day. They were tortured. They didn't see a tree. They didn't smell air for 3 years. At the end of those 3 years, they were finally sentenced to a very long prison sentence. They were going to send them to Siberia. But the sadists decided, but before you go to Siberia, we're going to give you one little punishment. You have to have 1,500 lashes, each of you. And then you'll go to Siberia. So how they did that was they would have a long line of people with whips, a long line of soldiers with whips, or prison guards with whips. And the person would have to walk through between the two lines, and both brothers did. They walked between the two lines, and the people were just going at them with these whips. It would be a miracle to even survive this. They went through and they didn't utter a word. They did not say a word. And when one of them got through, and when the other one was like 3 feet from the end, all of a sudden he stopped walking. And so they're just hitting, but everybody's wondering, why doesn't this guy walk? If you walk, you might survive. Why does he walk? And then someone finally figured out that his yarmulke had flown off his head, probably with one of the whippings he got. And he would not move without his yarmulke. This was a person who said, "No, I'm Jewish. I don't move. I don't take a step without a yarmulke." And so they found his yarmulke. They put it on his head, and he continued walking. After that, they're sentenced to 20 years in Siberia. But thank God, it's commuted to 20 years in Moscow. In Moscow, they're put into a facility where people are actually not so bad to them at all, and they allow them kosher food. They allow them to make, they gave them a cup to make kiddush on Friday night. Let them make Havdalah. And these two guys, what they wanted more than anything else was a Sefer Torah. They wanted to be able to learn Torah. And so a scribe was found. The entire Jewish community, the entire Russian Jewish community wanted to help these two guys because they knew it was a fraud and they were suffering so horribly. They found a very, very holy scribe who thought about everything he was going to do. He thought about every word he was writing, and he produced the most magnificent, tiny scroll. And this tiny scroll was somehow made it through and made it to them. And they decided a cell is a dirty place. You can't have, it's not holy enough for a Sefer Torah. So they took apart the Sefer Torah and Sefer Torah is sewn together. It's not one long thing. It's pieces of cowhide that are treated and written on. And then those pieces are sewn together. So they undid the sewing and they had several sheets. So it didn't have the sanctity of a Sefer Torah. And they were they felt extraordinarily fortunate. And they learned this as much as they could. They just learned and learned and learned and learned for the next 20 years. They finally got, I want to interrupt to say that I think that that's the most remarkable part of the story. If that story happened in our day, I don't know that anybody would have done what they did. I don't know, after never having committed a crime, after working so hard to publish Torah books, being arrested on false charges, being tortured, being, closeted into a prison cell for 3 years without daylight, and then being whipped 1,500 times each. I don't know how many people would revel in learning Torah. I don't know how many of us would meet that challenge, but they did. They reveled in this Torah, and they were like content. This was the light of their life. And okay, so they got out of prison after 20 years, and this Sefer Torah was passed down through their generations. And finally, it came to the 20th century, and one of the people from this family, I wish I remembered the name of the family. So one of the people from, I don't think it's this one. No, it's not this one. So one of the people from this family inherited the Sefer Torah, and he had many, many debts, and he couldn't afford to take care of it. You have to take care of a Sefer Torah. You have to unroll it all the time and then roll it again because it needs air. It was too much for him, and he decided to sell it. And somebody heard that he was selling it. A person who had no money heard that he was selling it, and he bought it for the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He took out tons of loans, and he bought it as a present for the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and they sent it to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And this Sefer Torah, this tiny little Torah, was treasured by the Rebbe. And every year on Simchas Torah and on other occasions, when they would use this tiny Sefer Torah, people would line up to kiss this tiny Torah, just line up. And there was okay, so it's in the other room, but I'll just tell the story without names. There was a man, and he was in Crown Heights on Simchas Torah, and he saw ahead of him in line, lined up to kiss the tiny Sefer Torah. He saw, a whole bunch of secular male Jews. They'd come with a Chabad rabbi from Manhattan for this experience of a lifetime. And as they were there, one of the guys talked to this person who noticed them, and he said, this is not my first time here. My first time here was last year. He said, I was just minding my own business in Manhattan when a bunch of crazy Chabadniks, I'd never seen anything like them, they're dancing in the streets on Simchas Torah. They're dancing, and I didn't know what Simchas Torah was. They were dancing in the street. They see me, and they say, hey, are you Jewish? And I said, yeah. And they grab me, and they start dancing with me. They take the black hat off their head. They put it on my head, and all of a sudden, I'm a dancing chassid too. They danced him all the way to Crown Heights. They danced him all the way to Crown Heights. They go into the Rebbe's shul, and they say, and he gets his turn to kiss the Sefer Torah. This guy, first of all, they told him, we're bringing you to the Rebbe's shul, so you can kiss the Torah. He said, what's Rebbe? I never heard that word before. And then they said, you're going to kiss his Sefer Torah. He said, what's Torah? I never heard of Torah before. This is a Jewish person. He gets to that shul, he gets to 770, he kisses the Sefer Torah, and he said, I felt like I was kissing infinity. It was like he was kissing heaven. He never had an experience like that, a wilder experience like that in his life. And he said, and I knew then and there that I am never missing this experience, that every year on the state, I'm coming back here because I never experienced anything like this in my life. So he experienced that not only because it was the Rebbe's Torah, but also because it was these two guys' Torah. And what were these two guys, these two brothers? They, they may not have gotten the easiest lot in life, but they decided that this is our lot. If Hashem wants us to be out of here, we'll be out of here tomorrow. But meanwhile, we're here. If we're here, we're supposed to be here. And if we're and then let's live this to the hilt. Let's do what we're supposed to do. Let's live let's live this, let's live this lot that Hashem gave us. Let's see what's here and live it to the hilt. And that's what they did it. That's what they did. And that's one reason why that Sefer Torah is so evocative for people. So, okay, so okay, that same scene plays itself out in our lives on a regular basis. Today, don't ask me why. I have no idea why. Today, I woke up and I was in sort of like a down mood, and I was in a down mood for a few hours. And, and so I hate being in a down mood, and I addressed everything that might be causing this down mood. And I was still in that down mood. And it was about 1 o'clock, and I said, Hashem, I hate to tell you, but I'm not going to go on Zoom tonight and talk about faith and calm. I'm not going to talk the talk if I'm not walking the walk. And all of a sudden it dawns on me, Shlomis Yehudis, instead of trying to figure out why you're depressed or why you're down, what's the next thing on your agenda? Just look at the next thing on your agenda, throw yourself into it, and this is a distraction. Even these feelings of depression, they are a distraction from your mission in life. And so I instantly changed, and I thought, what's my next thing? And I went into it I dove into it, whatever you want to say, and instantly all those funny feelings went away, because the message of life is wherever we are, we have to live it. We have to. What's the next good thing on my plate? Let me go do it. So I have only 3 minutes left, and I promised myself that I'm not going to go past 8 o'clock tonight. So I have several nice stories like Yeheskel Shimon, but I'm going to save them for next week. Meantime, I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions. And are you forcibly, no, you're not, nobody's forcibly muted, right? So I'm going to unmute everybody. I don't know how he muted. I'm just unmuting. Oh, Amy, you're muted on your own. And Susan and Zachary and GABBBL. You're okay. Okay, good. So my God.
I was forcibly muted, but I don't take it personally.
Okay, good. No, you weren't forcefully. You can unmute yourself. I don't know how he did it. I don't know if, whatever. There's 2 ways to mute. So anyway. Okay, good. And good. Amy, is that the new dog?
This is our new puppy.
Oh, how sweet. How sweet. How sweet.
Yes. I was passing her around, so it was my turn. Scott was like, "Are you done yet? Are you done yet?" I'm like, "Oh, just go."
Oh, that's so funny.
I want to.
GABBL, do you want to identify yourself? I'm so happy you're here. I hope you come next time.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Very cute and pretty. I saw her earlier.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, she's
Okay,
cute.
good. Okay, good. So, anyway.
So funny.
Okay, good. So, good. So,
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
yeah. Okay.
Oh my gosh, a kosher ice cream truck. I'm leaving work, and
Okay,
I
good.
guess that they. Sorry.
Only in
I'm
Muncie.
sorry.
Only in Muncie, New York. Okay, good. So I want to wish everybody a wonderful week, and that we should seize the moment. We should constantly focus on, I know what I want to say. Let's seize the moment. Tell somebody else. Candle lighting time this week is 8:08 in Brighton. If you live in, Susan, I forgot where you live.
Framingham.
Framingham was probably 809 because you're a minute more to the west. And if you're in Brookline, it's 807. But in Brighton, it's 808. And it's a very, very holy thing. It's a very, very holy thing. You know, candle lighting is 18 minutes before sunset, as everybody knows. And it's, you know, I have to, oh, another thing, I wrote the Rebbe twice today. That also probably helped. And in one of my letters from the Rebbe, it said spread candle lighting. So it's a holy, holy thing. It's an incredible thing. So, so I'm going to start publicizing the time. And
Shulamis,
yes.
I wanted to ask you, I was thinking that if it's a minhag, what makes it holy?
Minhag is incredibly holy. Something the Jewish people come up with themselves, and then it becomes universally accepted, or in your large group accepted. It's extraordinarily holy. And
Okay.
you know, half the things we do in the Pesach Seder are minhagim, and minhagim are what capture children's attention. They are, you know, God, Torah, and the Jewish people are one. And so it doesn't have to just filter straight down from Hashem. If it comes from below and it's holy, it's extraordinary. A minhag in many ways is even holier than anything else.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you.
How is it holier?
Very holy. How is a minhag holier? You know, you're not going to get in trouble if you don't do it, maybe. But where it can bring you is a very, very holy place. Very, very holy place.
I have an irrelevant digression about when you were talking about, I'm already figuring the name of the day, but the day that the Rebbe died in New York.
Yes.
Easily enough, I know I was in New York that week to go to the hospital because my friend Maddie, who still lives on Long Island, she was working in the hospital during the time that everyone was praying over the Rebbe. You had all these visitors.
Wait, can you lean for closer to your? There's
Sorry.
You know what? I'm gonna mute some people.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I was saying that I don't know how long it was that all of these people were there praying over him. So it must have been, I think, very close to his death. That, you know, we were talking about the special day, the anniversary of the Rebbe died. But
Yeah.
my friend Maddie, who lives in Long Island, she was actually working in the hospital that week and during that time that the Rebbe died. And then she would talk about it, how all these people, the Hasidim, would come in and pray over him. But we had met for lunch, crazily enough, in New York and right near Beth Israel Hospital or wherever it was. And we had lunch at this kosher deli that she liked. And all of these people, the Rebbe's people, she's like, you see, they were all swarming. They're here for lunch. She said they come for lunch in shifts. So there's always people praying for him. And I never forgot that, because whenever you talk about like how much, you know, you told that story about when he died, there was actually a clatter in the hallway and everyone ran out and he, you know, ended up passing away in peace.
I don't know that story. I didn't tell that story.
I thought you told this story. Maybe my friend, maybe Maddie's the one who told it.
Yeah, I didn't hear that story. Never
But
heard.
in any case, I remember because I was like, oh, they were probably at the deli because I remember having lunch there. There's crazy, you know, irrelevant digression, but that's my contribution is having lunch with Maddie at this kosher deli near Beth Israel Hospital in New York when all that was going on.
Very nice.
Funny that we're at the
One of my first experiences, I was a newspaper reporter for the Miami Herald in Florida, and I chose Key West as my beat. And while I was in Key West, I discovered Torah pretty much, and I decided I'm going to come on one of my vacations up to New York and buy some books and see what this stuff is all about. And I went to Brooklyn. I didn't know anything about Brooklyn. And I went into one of those little corner delis, and I sat down and I ordered rye bread and soup, something like that. And I felt so comforted in there. It was like people were speaking Yiddish. I couldn't understand anything, but there was something so soothing to my soul after living in Key West and thinking that, you know, Miami Beach and it's you know, Art Deco was the coolest thing in the world. I went into a Jewish deli and I found heaven.
That's a great story too.
Funny.
There's something about it. There's all these old little movies now these days about the death of the Jewish deli and how few there are. There used to be thousands and many, and the few people who are keeping all that food and tradition up.
Yeah.
It's really something.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, you guys, I'm getting off because I promised myself I would stick to my schedule.
Thank you,
And,
Yes,
Thank
you
you
have a
so
good
much.
Thank you so much.
May
Thank
you
you so
wake up
much.
in a blessed mood for all that you do for us.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Shavua Tov.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Sorry,
Shavua Tov.
Bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Molly.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Josie.
Bye, Amy.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.